Tuesday, the 19th of February. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the program. This is your Business Morning. I am Bosi Namafai. This is Channels Television, where news comes first. And of course, the biggest news is how Nigeria's financial markets were routed yesterday, the first trading day after the postponement of the general elections last Saturday. Let's give you a bit of a rundown if you're just waking up to some of the news around how the market is performing. About 196 billion naira was wiped out the equities market value at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's, of course, where the market finished off 1.61%. We'll get a bit more details of that in about a few minutes from now. Look at the currency market. The naira dipped 0.12% at the investors and exporters window, but the naira gained 0.56% against the dollar on Market Street. Then at the treasuries market, the central bank decided to sell open market operations, or what you call treasuries, but no sales was recorded. Investors turned their back on the central bank treasuries, the first after the elections postponement. Then we have the yields on Nigeria Eurobonds go higher yesterday, with those bonds listed on the international marketplace. Back at home here, there was a sell-off and yields expanding on some of the dated treasury bills and Naira bonds. Those are some of the stories. But despite all those routes, the unlisted securities market sidesteps that bloodletting on Market Street by gaining a massive 3.59%, the biggest or the largest single gain at the NESD over-the-counter since 2019 started. Meantime, Nigerian breweries' earnings release was met with negative sentiments by investors, even as the brewing giant reported a 41.18% decline in profit, because the brewer explained that the excise duty that is now being imposed, or that's been imposed by the government on all its products, jumped to 21.47%. In Naira terms, that's 25.84 billion Naira. If you add the marketing and distribution costs, which was explained by Nigerian breweries, 4.7%, and that hits Nigerian breweries' earnings. We're good to see what the rest of the brewers will be reporting as we get into the deep end of our earnings season this early in the year. Meantime, Arab Bank for Economic Development in Africa has extended $65 million facility to Tier 2 lender Sterling Bank PLC to finance private sector projects. The first tranche of that money, or that credit line, was $15 million. Sterling Bank is both at the FMDQ and the Nigerian Stock Exchange later today. The Middle East-based BADEA, which is the acronym for the Arab Bank for Economic Development, is looking to expand Arab Africa trade exchanges by promoting Arab exports destined for sub-Saharan Africa. And of course, you may have heard in the news that Aliko Dangote Foundation has launched a new report on healthcare and economic growth in Africa. Where is the nexus between healthcare and economic growth? That's a new one from Aliko Dangote Foundation. The new report highlighted areas where governments and private sector can collaborate to improve health outcomes, quality healthcare, accessibility, among other things. You want to find the report? You can get it online. Of course, that's the foundation belonging to Africa's richest man, Nigerian-born Aliko Dangote. Move all of that straight into my Market Street. Let's bring on Temple Ashaju, our business correspondent, is live to us from the studios at the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Temple, this is the morning after the bloodletting, but of course, we'll see how things pace out later today. At the end of the program, we'll hear a bit more. Temple, come through to us on the program and give us a few minutes of your time, how bloody it was. Give us the devil that is in the details as far as the markets were concerned on Monday.
Well, we saw a lot of investors yesterday quickly selling down as a result of the 11th hour suspension that we had on our general election here. So that, of course, got the cold shoulder of a lot of investors here yesterday, and that was how we eventually ended the key benchmark indices 1.61% down on the very first trading day of the week, and then we ended up having a slow start, of course, to this new week. At a point in time, we saw the losses around some 2% plus yesterday in the market, but then we saw a bit of domestic investors setting in to come and buy more pop some of those losses, and that's how it trimmed down to 1.61%. We saw the indices dropping to 31,000 psychological line at a point in time, and then it moved back up to 32,000 psychological line. We saw the equity capitalization also losing some huge billions, but then that was also moderated, and that's how we eventually closed back at 12.004 trillion naira yesterday. But if you look at the activity level compared to what we had on Friday, it was really negative. We got 71% decline in terms of volume of transactions, and in terms of value of transaction, there was a decline of 48% as we settled at 3.36 billion naira for the whole transaction of 233.42 million units of shares that took place yesterday, and the deals yesterday was 4,134. Top trade yesterday was in the banking sector. Of course, that was specifically Axis Bank. Axis Bank declined by some 4.5% yesterday, had losses around some 25 million units of shares that was traded for a value of just 160 million naira. But if they don't look at the market metrics in terms of month-to-date and year-to-date performance, we saw how we eventually tapered in terms of month-to-date to some 5.34%, and year-to-date also reduced to some 2.42% in terms of how we did yesterday. The market breadth was really, really negative. We got just 12 gainers and, of course, 37 losers. And the 37 losers was championed by Transcorp PLC, in spite of the fact that the company is declaring a 3-kobo dividends to investors with an impressive earnings that came in for the year 2018, declared to the market yesterday. We saw that that was the top loser in the market, lost some 9.94% of its share price, while Presco had 10% gains and was the top gainer in the market yesterday. If you look at the banking, the sectoral analysis now, on the sectoral front, the banking names were the worst hit, down some 3.21% in terms of the reading for that indices there. Wema Bank lost the most. Wema Bank was down 9.71%. Axis Bank was also down. UBA was down. Guarantee Trust Bank was also down to 36 naira level. And these are the key banks that had enjoyed so much of interest from the foreign portfolio investors that came in the preceding week. If you look at the consumer goods segment of the market, we've got losses, of course, in Nigerian breweries. Nigerian breweries also has a 1 naira 83 kobo dividend declared yesterday, but investors didn't care about that. They went down, the Nigerian breweries went down 9.64%. I think by now it should be down to some 79 naira per share, or almost around 79 naira to 80 naira per share again, after it had earlier moved as high as 81, 82 naira per share. Honeywell Flour was down. Dangote Sugar, which enjoyed so much of interest from a lot of investors in recent time, was also down yesterday 4.90%. And that was how the reading for the consumer goods segment of the market was really negative yesterday. Industrial good, we saw CCNN and WAPCO also declining. Insurance segment of the market, NEM Insurance, Sovereign Insurance, and of course WAPIC Insurance all declined in prices. Oil and gas was the second the worst hits in the segment yesterday. We saw that a lot of the names there, the major names that you have always tradable on that segment of the market, were also down. This takes us, of course, to the energy market, where we saw that corn oil was basically flat, Forte oil was flat, but 11 PLC got some 7.61% decline. O&O was down 6.57%, and of course Total was also down 7.32%, coming next to 11 PLC. Etana PLC was also down 4.21%. But if you look at Japol, which is a high-stake game for a lot of investors, Japol was up some 5%, and it rose from 20 kobo to 21 kobo. That's the level it's been for some time now. Bolson talked earlier about the gains that we saw in NASD OCC, rising some 3.59%. These days, whenever you see so much losses in the stock market, you find a bit of gains in the unlisted securities market. And this is how investors in the market, and the Nigerian capital market at large, have been able to rebalance their portfolio by always moving away from the stock markets to the unlisted securities market. That's the kind of sentiment we saw yesterday playing out at NSDO2C, where the USI rose 3.59% and settled at 739 psychological line. If you look at the debt market, where of course we'll be able to get more updates later, there was a bit of bullish sentiment. Of course, in terms of bonds, we saw average yields moderating by 3 basis points to settle at 14.63%. And for Treasury bills, where we saw the fact that average yields also contracted 2 basis points to 14.73% yesterday. Of course, that's a bit of a reaction to the fact that CBN had a bit of an OMO auction yesterday, but there was no sale on that, Bosun.
Okay, Tempo, thank you very much. We'll get to see what the first call on the equities market will look like today. That's within the hour. Tempo, stand by. We're coming back to you at about 10:50 here within the hour on the program. Thank you very much, our business correspondent live to us at the Stock Exchange. So why is the Federal Inland